Anxiety, fear, stress, apprehension, worry, panic. There's only one cause for all this, and it's you. None of what I just mentioned are based on what's actually likely to happen. They're based on what could be horrible if something did happen. They're not based on probability. They're based on two words: what if? What happens inside your brain is you experience the sensation of worry and treat it like danger. When you get tricked into believing the what if question would come true, you're convincing yourself that your discomfort, your state of being at the time, is your permanent condition. When that happens, your brain thinks you're in danger, which leads you to struggling with yourself to remove those thoughts from your mind, which leads you to doubting yourself, which sends you spiraling down that hole further and further when all you're trying to do is stop the fear from getting worse. The anxiety builds up, and because you can't see into the future, you freak out even more because you don't know what's going to happen. And because you can't control what's going to happen, you freak out more. And your initial thoughts to help calm yourself down only made it worse, and now you have more fear and self-doubt. So you do what most people do and you go make yourself a drink. You can't predict the future, can you? No. Everyone worries. It's a part of life and the human condition. What's different between some people and others isn't the fact that they don't have anything to worry about. It's how they respond to the worry, how they respond to the thing. The most important step is to see how you relate to your issues and change how you react. I'm Sean Swarner, and I'm a two-time terminal cancer survivor who was once given 3 months to live, then 14 days. I was read my last rites, I was in a coma for a year, and I only have one functioning lung. No one in history has ever had Hodgkin's lymphoma and Askins sarcoma before. I go in once a year for my checkup to see how my body's doing, and for the past 28 years I've been granted another 365 days to live. I can't control the fact that I had cancer. I can't control the fact that every year I have to go in for blood work to see if I might have another expiration date, but I can control how I react to it. When I was climbing Mount Everest and walking across aluminum ladders tied together, spanning crevasses, I had every opportunity to let fear take over. When I fell 100 feet on the side of Denali, I could have let my brain be controlled by the fear. I had to change my pants when I got back to camp, but I remained somewhat in control. Any fear you have in your life will consume you if you let it. However, if you change your relationship to it and how you react, you can take back your life and become stronger through adversity. When most people struggle against worry or fear, unfortunately the worry gets worse as opposed to getting any better. It's very possible to respond emotionally to false thoughts just as powerfully as we could to real threats. And that's because our emotions are actually reactions to the content of our thoughts, not necessarily the reality of the problem. If you want to worry less, if you want to have less anxiety, you need to change the way you've reacted to it for the past X number of years you've been alive, because it's become a habit. You're stuck in the same pattern of debating with yourself whether or not something should be worried about from a logical standpoint. What happens is you do the same thing over and over, but you expect a different outcome, when in reality, you're not doing anything differently. So you're stuck in that pattern, the habit of trying to control it. And nothing really changes. No one can see the future. We don't know what it truly holds until it's here in the present. And when it comes to worrying about something, how often has your projected thought of the future been correct? Usually it's not as horrible as you predicted, right? When you were a kid and you were worried about getting your report back, you may have imagined it much worse than it really was. Maybe you're older now and you've been called into the boss's office before. Your stomach drops, your hands get sweaty, your heart beats faster. Was it as bad as you thought? Maybe, but most of the time our imagined future tragedies are never nearly as bad as when they're in the present. What happened was you were feeling afraid in the absence of any real danger. You did it to yourself. We get so used to working within our thoughts that we often confuse them with reality and make the mistake that what we're thinking is actually really happening. For cancer survivors like myself, we have to develop a new relationship with our worry. Otherwise, it's going to happen over and over again. And it's not just with our checkups. It's with any cough, any sneeze, sniffle, a sore throat. We need to try something new. And I'm not talking about trying harder. Trying harder as opposed to smarter with something like fear is like trying harder to go to sleep. The harder you try, the worse it gets. You can't lay in bed thinking to yourself, go to sleep, go to sleep. It just doesn't work that way. Everyone talks to themselves more than anyone else throughout the day. It's that internal dialogue we need to start paying attention to because we're each our own best friends or our worst enemies. Over time, we have developed patterns in how we talk to ourselves. We all have good days where the internal dialogue is about lifting us up, praise, confidence. But we also have bad days where we're telling ourselves, oh, you can't do anything right. Everyone's going to laugh at you. You're not smart enough. You're not strong enough. But over time, our thoughts develop into patterns. And those patterns are, unfortunately, usually detrimental, not only to our mental well-being, but physically too. There is always going to be something to worry about because we can worry about any insane possibility we can imagine. Here's the thing. The more you oppose your thoughts and emotions, the more you'll probably have them. Doubt, worry, fear, anxiety, that's not danger. That's discomfort. Discomfort will pass. When we worry, it usually starts with a trigger, and that trigger often starts with those two words. We may not be paying attention to our internal dialogue and actually hear those two words, but they're probably there. And those two words are, what if? Being a cancer survivor, I look back at the experiences I had. One of them was when I was vomiting for 36 hours nearly nonstop, but I didn't want to turn into a victim. I look back and see it as an empowering experience. I'm stronger because of what I went through. Let's look at those two words I just mentioned. What if? When your brain thinks, what if, you're telling yourself, let's imagine. And it's usually the worst case scenario, something catastrophic. Most people focus on the negative. Look back at your life. What do you remember most? Is it the praise you received or the great comments? For most people, 9 out of 10 times, they remember the negative. Day in and day out, this becomes your pattern. You begin running on cruise control without really paying attention to what you're telling yourself. I've developed a series of mini challenges to help you curb your anxiety and reel in that fear. Challenge 1. Start right now by paying more attention to what you're telling yourself. Notice whenever you have a what if thought. Start focusing on what you actually want to do and stop avoiding what you don't want. Maybe send yourself a quick text that just says if every time you have a negative thought. Whatever you think would help you start paying attention to your internal dialogue and notice how often your brain tries to bring you back to the dark side. Challenge 2. Here's another thing you can do. Pick a word or a couple of words that cause your fear or anxiety. You've probably heard a ton of them already, maybe the news, from someone else talking about it, whatever. Write it or them down on a piece of paper, then repeat it out loud 50 times. You can do it in the bathroom while looking at yourself in the mirror if you want. You can do it in the bedroom. You can do it with a friend. It doesn't matter. What you're doing is you're desensitizing yourself to it. After about 35 or 40 times, you might even start laughing at yourself because you'll understand you're reacting to a word and not the actual situation or the danger. It doesn't mean that what's causing you the fear isn't any less dangerous, but what you're doing is understanding your relationship to it is changing. For me, I still respect cancer completely because I know it could potentially kill me, but I have a different understanding of it. I have a different perspective. I don't let the word instill fear into my life. Remember, it's not the thing that's causing you to feel any way, it's your reaction to it. On that same note of respect, just like my cancers, you may firmly believe what you're worrying about is legitimate to have anxiety. That's fine, but don't give it more credit than it deserves. Don't let it take your strength from you. I know most people, including myself, say, I fought cancer or I battled cancer. Maybe we're giving the disease more credit than it deserves. I'm not saying I should ignore it. No, I totally respect it because of how horrible it can be. I know it's there, but I'm doing everything I can to not let it have as much power over me as it used to. Challenge 3. Another way to help yourself be more prepared to deal with anxiety. When I was taking classes with IPAC to become a certified professional coach, one of the best things you can do is acknowledge and validate. What this means is when you worry about something again, when you're feeling anxious again, acknowledge to yourself you know it's happening. that you know your brain is having an anxious thought. And it's a legitimate thought because of whatever your current circumstance is right now. Don't dismiss it. Just accept that you're having a thought you don't particularly want or appreciate right now. Don't try and contradict the idea or thought. Don't try to disprove it. Don't try to make it leave your brain, but recognize there's nothing wrong with having thoughts like that, because that's all it is, a thought. It's like that unwanted piece of junk mail you get telling you that you need to apply for whatever great thing they're advertising. You probably don't even open it up, do you? You notice it's there, and what do you do with it? You toss it in the garbage or the recycling. Same thing with your anxious thoughts. Recognize them, but just let them fall into the brain garbage. So, now you have a gear list preparing you for the next time you get any news that causes you to feel anxious or scared. Pay attention to your internal dialogue and your what-if questions. Pick a trigger word or words, write it down or them down, and repeat them out loud 50 times. Acknowledge and validate your thoughts when they start coming in, then toss them out. When I was on an expedition skiing to the North Pole, my group was being tracked by a couple of polar bears. Was I scared? Was I anxious? Hell yeah, I was. That was real. You're not being chased by anything that could potentially eat you alive. And if you are, stop watching this video and do something about it. The point is, even though I was being tracked by something with sharp claws, huge teeth, and weighs as much as my Jeep, I still managed to keep that fear under control because I didn't ask myself, what if?